for the whole panel. You can also say that. We will, in principle, try to reply to all the questions, but if not, if there is no time, we'll try to address them in writing to those of you who have put them. As you have noticed, this meeting is being recorded only for the purpose of the project, and we will, of course, use it only for this effect. I now give the word to Emilio. Please, Emilio.
Thank you, Domingos, and thank you everyone for participating. First of all, obviously to the speakers that have been generally given their time to share with us their experience. And this webinar has been organized around the particular structure of Spanish fire management, which is mostly handled by regions, by autonomous regions. As you may know, in Spain, we have this territorial structure. So most of the fire activities are done at regional level, but also there is coordination activities and research activities at national level. So we have invited 2 persons that are in charge of regional fire management, and another one that is in charge of the national coordination, fire coordination. So I will introduce you the 3 speakers: Álvaro Picardo, José Ramón Peribáñez, and Ángela Iglesias. I will introduce you in the order that they will speak. First, Álvaro. He's a forest engineering that is working as a technical advisor for the General Direction in Natural Heritage and Forest Policy of the regional government of Junta de Castilla y León. It's actually one of the largest in Spain, about 80,000 square kilometers, if I remember well. His main activities include participation in the region forestry law and the main regional forest policy instruments, and he's also quite active in international projects in the framework of the Standing Forest Committee of the European Commission, the International Model Forest Network, and a large involvement in the promotion of silvopastoralism, smart climate forestry, fire prevention, and wood mobilization and non-timber forest products. I will introduce the other speakers as they are going to participate, but first focus now on what Álvaro is going to say. Thank you, Álvaro.
Thanks a lot, Emilio, and thanks a lot, Domingo, for this opportunity to present the experience and the strategy of the region of Castilla y León. I'm going to share my screen and present our regional experience. Okay. Well, the objective of the presentation is to present the strategic approach to fire management in one of the 17 regions of Spain, Castilla y León. And I want to clarify that there is no official regional strategy, but a common approach has been maintained for more than 30 years. And in second place, I would like to present what we call the underlying factors explaining the fire context in our landscape, and to present our vision and our strategic objectives as a region. And this is our landscape. This is the Iberian Peninsula. And I want to highlight the fact that we have 1 million years presence of humans that have co-developed with the landscape, with the rest of the animal and habitat populations. And that's fundamental, because 500,000 years, these people have the capacity to manage fire, and that has been shown in Torralba and Ambrona, archaeological sites in the province of Soria. So we've been really interacting with our landscape, and particularly for about 10,000 years, we've been managing grazing animals and in fact creating a very particular landscape. And we first ask ourselves why some landscape didn't burn. why the province of Soria in our region in the east didn't burn, and the provinces of Zamora and León had so many forest fires. And also at the regional level, why Aquitaine didn't burn like Galicia or El Bierzo in the northwest of our region. And more generally, why the Swedish forest didn't burn while the Siberian and Canadian taigas burn every year. And even more important than that is what made that some areas stop having forest fires in the past, why the province of Soria stopped burning at the beginning of the 20th century, and the region of Aquitaine stopped burning in the second half of that century. And that's the monument to the people dead. Like I remember that something like 80 people dead in 1949 in Aquitaine. So it's more or less similar to what happened in Portugal. But something changed in this landscape. And we conclude that the landscapes that burn are the ones that have a risk. First of all, if you don't have that risk, then it doesn't happen. Where sustainable forest management is not in place, that's fundamental for us. And there is not a social pressure preventing that whoever might obtain a benefit from a forest fire could get it with no other detriments. And we conclude that there are key underlying factors that explain those forest fires, and that we need to understand, first of all, and second, to manage those underlying factors to handle this problem. And for us, these underlying factors were, first of all, a rural culture of frequent use of fire. And that's something that we share with Portugal. Probably in the east of Spain is not the same, but in the western half of the peninsula, it's real a fact. In second place, we have a vegetal landscape in a face of extreme risk. We have an economy that has still a very weak forest base. And we have a rural society that is barely sensitive to the problem of forest fires. People in urban areas really do not understand this situation, but that's, for us, that's a relevant fact. And this last year, we suffered critical meteorological conditions that originated the worst forest fires in Europe and the worst in our regional history. And we think that public opinion doesn't understand this natural phenomenon, the factors guiding them, and the limits and the capacities that we as a society have to really extinguish or suppress these emergencies. A very relevant fact is that we still have around 10,000 forest fires every year in Spain, and only in Castilla y León it's close to 2,000. That has begun to decrease in the last decade. That's very positive, and that's a change of context, almost by 20%. But 95% are provoked by humans, and that's something that we really need to understand and to change. And risk is increasing. That's making things really dangerous and frightening. And first of all, because of the loss of fragmentation. We always refer to climate change, but we think that the first really striking change is the loss of fragmentation in the landscape. In second place is the biomass accumulation. That is, it's slow, but it's going and building up more and more fuel. And in fact, the National Forest Inventory of Spain, it showed us that in the 70s, we had around 30 tons per hectare, And in 50 years, we have doubled that amount. But probably in the next 50 years, we will double the amount, and still we will not get the average in the European Union that is around 150 tons of wood per hectare. And that's not total biomass, that's just the wood contained in these stems. And of course, we are facing worsening climate scenarios. So we've seen that we've gone from fire sizes of about certain hundreds of hectares to thousands. And last year, we faced 30,000 hectares in one forest fires. the question is, are we going towards 300,000 hectares like in California or Australia? We think, yes, we're facing that future. And that's something to really consider. So what is our proposed regional strategy? That's something that we were working in a project in 2018. And we tried to develop this. And that's the vision that we came with. It hasn't been approved, but that's what we came with. It's we would like to be a society coexisting with fire that manages natural resources as a source of richness and social well-being, that suppresses fire securely and efficiently when needed, and that uses fire as a management tool in a controlled way. And the purpose of our strategy would be to reduce the risk and the damages created by forest fires. We came up with 4 key strategic objectives, and the first is to achieve an effective, efficient, and safe response to forest fires. But we need to reduce that huge number of human-caused forest fires. If we face something like 200, it would be very different to 2,000. And it goes in one place, in one direction and the other, okay? But we want to reduce that number. We want to increase the protection of villages, and we have more than 7,000 villages in the region, and we want to achieve a more resistant and resilient landscape. To me, this is the key slide of our presentation. Those 4 objectives that we've been working in, and I will present a little bit. So, in first place, what we have done to achieve an efficient response to forest fires? Well, our firefighting system was created at the national level around the 60s with the support of the American cooperation, and we replicated the American model, okay? But in the 80s, the regions received full competences in forestry, and we improved our capacities. Around the year 2000, we passed a regional forest plan, and we really thought about our strategy for the first time, and we systematized our firefighting system, and it is being developed particularly this year, in this decade. And the main regulation was established in 2004, establishing El Operativo, establishing the firefighting system in Castilla y León. And here you have access to that is going to be changed next month. Okay, so it's because we are really working on improving. And I want to highlight the market continuity, because no major changes in the organizations after great disasters have occurred, and we know that they deeply transform organizations like in Catalonia in the 80s, or in other countries or in other regions with different big fires. Our firefighting system is well adapted to our regional conditions. We have very different systems in Spain, but it's because Madrid, that will be introduced later on, has a very different framework of the landscape, okay? And we have strong differences in risk among our provinces. It's based in the regional forestry administration. It's coordinated with other civil protection system, but we are a forest system. We are not a civil protection system, okay? And it fully integrates suppression and prevention actions. And that's the second point that I want to highlight. We are really convinced that we need to work at the same time in both directions. It's a very complex system under a single authority. That's also very important. And it's our regional minister, the head of the system. And it is public, it's professional, and probably not as much specialized as others. But we think that we have to find a balance between that, because we think that we need specialization, but we also need to have common foresters working in the ground, being part of the system. We have to reduce the number of forest fires. And for the last 2 decades, this has been the main focal points for our strategy. And in 2002, the Plan 42 was really an innovative initiative for active prevention action with a social focus. And we focused on the 42 municipalities that have more than 100 forest fires every year. That's amazing, but that's a fact in a region, and we concentrated with the people that were living in the landscape. It was not always like in this photograph, just hearing, okay? We went to the countryside, we listened to them, we had people working at the local level, trying to change the culture that is really different. And we think that we were somehow successful in that. We have to increase the protection of villages. Now that's something that we didn't realize as much 20 years ago, but now would be the first priority, because we have abandoned agriculture very close to the villages, and we have the highest risk in that point, okay? And so InfoCal is the plan that set up the framework for the local plans that we haven't developed as we should, okay? And we know that other regions in Spain have been working much more than us, and we will concentrate in the next decade, particularly in this. And in 2016, we approved the local forest employment plan. And this is relevant for us because that's something that we got together with the local administration. We have more than 2,300 municipalities in the region, much more than the entire country of Portugal, and probably more than in the entire country of Sweden, okay? More than 2,000 municipalities and 7,000 villages. And with this, we began working in prevention actions. But we need to work at the landscape level. And that's something new that we have realized we have to do. And the question is, well, everybody's talking about this, how to do it. And we think that it's not applying silvicultural treatments in specific areas to break out forest massifs. We don't think that that's the key question. We don't think that it's applying prescribed burning. And those are people, foresters in the province of Zamora doing, because it's not only, okay, it's not paying for pastoral services. And that's been said all the time. It's not public investment in certain innovative projects or actions. We are convinced that this is a general challenge for the entire society of our region and our country. And we think that a new paradigm for the forest sector is needed that gets to make forest activity profitable. That's the key of everything. We need to attract forest investments to the landscape, and we are not being successful in that because that's a problem, okay? Because we need to develop the different value chains from bioenergy to wood construction. And now the Commission is at the European level, is putting a lot of controversial and putting in that, is it sustainable to use the biomass? Please, it's absolutely we are not in the situation of Indonesia or Brazil. So what are we trying to do? Please, let's carefully think about it, because it's crazy that we are putting question marks on the sustainability of bioenergy. And of course, wood construction, and a new active approach to nature conservation, because we do not want to have landscape in glass boxes that nobody touches. That's the problem. That's what we've got for 30 years of considering this type of paradigm, and we need to change it, because we need a new legal and fiscal national framework for forest activity. That it's really crazy, and what it's getting is that we do not attract investment only for eucalyptus, okay? And that's wonderful. We do not want to put in context the eucalyptus or the pine plantations. The problem is that we are not getting that all the value chains are really profitable. And bioeconomy is the opportunity, okay? That's what we need to work at. We need an integrative approach to landscape that is not only working in forest policy. If we do not get responsibles of the agricultural policy to work together with us in the design of the landscape, we're lost. And so far, we haven't been successful in that. In 1940, in Spain, we pastured more than 32 million hectares, probably more than 40 million hectares out of the 50. But now we pasture less than 8 million. That's dramatic. And that's the difference, because it has been something that we've had for 10,000 years. And we need to double the graze area. That's why I was saying it's not a question of paying for pastoral services. It might be the case around Madrid or around the city of Barcelona. But the problem is getting farmers to really make a profit out of extensive livestock in the province of Zamora, the province of Cuenca, and the province of Orense. But in the EU, we are putting a lot of problems to grazing activities. And we have the pasture admissibility coefficient. That, to me, that's even worse than the controversial about bioenergy. We are doing the contrary of what is needed. We really need to go to support pasture management. But we also need an integrative approach of physical planning and policy with forestry. We need to redesign the forest-urban interface in the landscape. We need a new version of the habitat concept, not thinking in nature conservation, thinking in the general landscape where natural communities exist, but also people live in the landscape. And we passed the sectoral habitat plan last year with this idea of working together with architects, with urban planners, to develop a new concept for our landscape. We are very much concerned on how we can pay that, because the increase in the public budget dedicated to forest fire is amazing. We are concerned about the sustained increase in the proportion of the public budget dedicated to the forest sector that goes to the firefighting. We need to make forestry attractive, but if we dedicate all the public resources to fire suppression, then we're not doing what we need to do. And the US have called the attention on that. I don't want to comment, but in Castilla y León, we dedicate 30 euros per hectare per year. That's last year's data for fire management, okay? Prevention and suppression actions. But that's 26 euros per person per year. And I would like to compare with the data of Madrid, because we think that this is not fair. Because in Madrid, we have more than 6 million people. That's more than double that we have in Castilla y León. But we receive our budget based on the number of people. So the resources are not fairly distributed. That's something to think about it. And still, after the last season's fires, the government has signed an agreement to double the budget, okay? And we think that that's not the way to do it. But of course, we are convinced that we need those resources. But we need to think how to balance the fiscal effort by citizens among different regions in Europe. Okay, because it's not something between Madrid and Castilla y León that we are neighbors. It's something between the Netherlands and Greece, okay, between the different landscapes. The agreement to finance the regional action should consider the landscape size and not only the size of population. I'm getting to the end, and the final slide would be towards communication, because if we do not work more in communication, we won't succeed in changing the paradigm, okay? And we need to communicate the level of the risk and what people should do, and people to understand the capacities that we have, but we especially need to communicate the need of forest activity, because most of urban people do not want forests to be cut. And we've seen that in Aragon two weeks ago, okay? But we have a problem with this, and we need to explain to people that we need to redesign a landscape to be coherent with the 10,000 years that I refer at the beginning of our presentation. And we have created Naturaleza Castilla y León just for that, for the communication efforts. But we know that we need to do much more. We think that we are facing a national and European crisis. We think that we need a national strategy to manage forest in Spain. Oh, excuse me. And we think that we need a European strategy for resilient landscapes. And in the US, they go before us because probably they go 2 decades or 3 ahead of us. But they are talking about a wildfire crisis. And we think that we are going to face the same type of problems in the next years. Thanks a lot. Muito obrigado. Muchas gracias.
Thanks a lot, Álvaro. That was a very provoking presentation. So I hope there will be quite a few of questions afterwards. But yeah, let's move to the following presentations. As Álvaro was saying, in Spain we have quite a diverse system of fire management, and I consider quite useful to present a quite different situation to the region that Álvaro just mentioned, which is the region of Madrid. This is mostly an urban area with more than 6 million people and not very much forested area. So in this case, I think the main issue would be the wild and urban interface, because we have obviously quite a big quite a large part of the region that is covered by residential areas. So I invited José Ramón Peribáñez, who is has a PhD in forest engineering, and he's currently the chief of the Civil Protection Department and temporary chief of the Fire Brigade of the region of Madrid. And he was formerly involved also in the activities of the Geographic Information System Department of the Madrid Civil Protection Service. So he has plenty of experience in dealing with fires in the region. Thank you for participating here, José Ramón, and the floor is yours. José Ramón, can you talk?
Okay, thanks, Emilio. I'm going to try to share the window from my computer.
Do you want me to share the slides, or do you want to do it yourself?
I'm going to do it myself.
Okay, good.
I can.
So you have the button, yeah, it's in the bottom part.
Yeah, can you see it?
No.
No. No?
Yeah, it's coming.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I would like to thank Emilio for inviting me to participate in this working group, which I think that is very interesting. Please excuse my current level of English. For a few years, I admit that I have abandoned the conversation in this language. I've been trying to learn another language like Portuguese to understand fathers. I like Portugal very much, and I would like to learn Portuguese very soon. But as now, I don't speak very well English or Portuguese. Sorry if I make any mistakes in this language.
Please put the slides in display mode so we can see the whole slide, not just.
Okay.
No, actually we are. Or I can do it myself if you have issues there.
Okay. Can you see the now? Or?
We see the slide, but it's not in the presentation mode.
No.
So it only covers a small part of the window.
Okay. Wait a minute. Please.
Don't worry, Jose Ramon, I'll do it. I'll do it.
Okay.
Could you just give me the control? Finalize sharing. Yes. Okay. So I'll do it. Okay.
Do you have?
Yes. Okay. Can you see the screen
Okay.
now? Okay.
Yes. Well, I'm sorry if I make any mistakes with the English language. In this presentation, I would like to initially show you the current situation of the community of Madrid, a region in the center of Spain with more than 6 million inhabitants, with a total area of 800,000 hectares, of which half, 4,000 hectares are forest land, and the other half wooded forest. We have a diversity in urban areas and forest areas that force us to make special measures from the point of view vegetation and extinction. Then I would like to show you the currently existing extinguishing device, and finally the preventive measures. I would also like to leave the door open for those who wish to be able to learn about various research projects on the improvement of emergency management in the community of Madrid, such as the statistical analysis as complex systems from the point of view of mathematical modeling, several index of collapse and operational response that can allow us to optimize extinction strategies and resource management. Finally, I would like to indicate the versatile nature of the community of Madrid Fire Department, in the sense that we are the competent ones to act not only in the direction of extinction of forest fires, but also in any other intervention related to other types of emergencies, such as fires in homes, traffic accidents, chemical spills, etc. Our origin was in the forestry service of the community of Madrid, and that as a significant experience has been achieved. We believe that this is without a doubt the best model in the community of Madrid. But we cannot say that it's the best model in the rest of Spain. I think every region of Spain is different, and the model is adequate for the necessities. Here we have the annual plan from the prevention, surveillance, and extinction of forest fires in the community of Madrid. Is plan of this year is from this or the last week. The next the objectives of this annual plan are very ambitious but realistic. We have general objectives to minimize the ecological, economic, and social damage caused by forest fires. And we have several indicators. One of them is the burn area. We think that it's very important that the number of conatos, the number of fires with a burn area less than 1 hectare is very important. We have this indicator as one of the the most important in the activities. The causes of the forest fire in Madrid, as the same that of the rest of Spain, more or less. I think that it's very important that here in Madrid, the number of causes unknown is less than any other years, but it's very important to know more about these unknown causes. The forest fire less than 1 hectare of an area is very different every year. In the last year, we have 84%, but it's very different. I think that if we use only 10 years, it's not a significant period of data, but we have more or less 80%. Here in Madrid, we have sorry. Here in Madrid, we have more or less 1,500 firefighters. Here is the location of the resources is sometimes in the summer with a special ubication, and the rest of the summer with different ubication. It is the risk map that has been calculated, taking into account not only the historical series of fire, but also the methodological characteristics of each day and the state of the vegetation of each day. However, it's intended to make official a new operational response indicator of collapse index that relates in real time not only the risk but also the real time response capacity with the existing resources at any given moment. In one of the final reference documents, we can see it in more details. Its calculations, method, and its multiple application of statistical estimation of other actions from the management of extinction strategies to previous organizational ones such as the calculation of insurance policies, a field, the latter very important to improve the forest sector economics. We have the air resources in automatic dispatch. It's only that we have automatic dispatch when we have any advice of fire. Then we can change the dispatch, but initially we have automatic dispatch. Sorry about my English. Then in our operational center, SECOP, we have several tareas as analysis, qualified initial analysis of fire behavior, simulation of propagation, Campbell analysis, identification of secondary of fire potential, simulations. The next, please, Emilio. thermal inversion and better return time, possibility analysis of the impact of fire in the urban forest interface, possible influence of smoke and paving in the urbanized area and situation. Okay. Then wait a minute. I have some ideas here. The assurance and confidential is very important for us because we have to make a difference between the forest and the urban zone, and we have forest assurance especially to the forest areas. And we have two configurations, north and south. Ordinary and south. Then here in the fire detection is done with a specific personal and visual based calculation tools, and in some special cases with infrared sensors, detection by comparative image, and smoke spectrometry and long-range cameras. For many years now, we have also had a long-range visible and infrared camera in the coordination helicopter that transmit images wherever desired, allow us to locate geographic coordinates on the ground, and the results can be displayed immediately in a geographic information system. Here is an example with the Cinco Villas Tower in the north of community of Madrid, where we can see the area that this special point of forest fire surveillance can see. The calculation is only with the didnt with special algorithms and very simple algorithm. Then we have some studies to optimize the ubication of the forest fire surveillance to try to get the base ubication. Then we have two maintenance of forest firewalls. Here we can see a sample. I would like to say that we have the same problematic that in Castilla Leon. We have different characteristics, but the analysis of the situation, I think, is very similar. In Castilla Leon, in Madrid, is different that we have 6 million people, and it's different that we have a lot of urbanized areas with more buildings near forest areas, but the necessity of invest more in the forest sector, I think, is the more important. Example here, we have example of the proximity of the urbanizations to the forest land, that how it is very abundant, a normal fire that in other areas of Spain will not have an impact on the media. In the media, here it is always have. Here we cannot afford to stop extinguish any fire, no matter how small it may be, due to the danger that it may lead to a different type of accident with worse consequences. Here, then we have we've been using resin to reduce fuel loads, but here in Madrid, we pay for it, and I'm not sure if it is the best way to reduce the forest fire. I think that it's very important to improve the resin to reduce fuel loads, but I'm not sure if it's very good to pay for it from the administrations. Have to we have to for its urbanization located near a forest land specific prevention plans from specific self-prevention plans, such as roads around the site that allow firefighters to act on evacuation. Also around it have areas free of bushy vegetation with trees pruned. Also the municipalities have to have special emergency plans for the forest fire. Here in Madrid, we are working about it, but we have we still need more time to make this very good. Planning at the local scope, all the municipalities defined as high-rise areas must have a municipal action plan for forest fire. We have here in our special forest fire plan of civil protection in FOMA here in Madrid. We have annex of these requirements to the municipalities. Now we only have these plans of auto protection. We need more than more plans about auto protection. And the same with the plans against forest fires. That here we say the self-protection plans are a good instrument for the personal and material resources. Here, I think it's very important. We have 400 meters around the forest land where we are very interesting to protect. Here we have a forest fire. I think it was 10 years ago here in Valdemorillo. Valdemorillo is a village in the west of the community. It's only one of the very fires that we have in near urbanized areas. I think it's sometimes in this forest fire, el mayor peligro, the more danger is to evacuate the people. We know to extinguish the forest fire. We know to extinguish the fire in the buildings, but sometimes it's a very important problem how to evacuate the people. We need to use emergency plans of these municipalities, because it's un trabajo añadido, a work very difficult, and sometimes it's supposed ralentizar to make to reduce the effectives of the firefighters to extinguish the fire. It's a very important program. Here we have enlace to YouTube. I don't know if you can click on the YouTube direction, Emilio. No?
Yes, but I need to get out of the presentation and then come back again.
Okay.
Maybe as we are going to leave the presentation, maybe people can then take a look to. I took a couple of slides from the presentation, no, with the thermal camera as well.
Okay. Yes. And here you have further information about all this the presentation. I hope the presentation was interesting. Thank you for Emilio's invitation, and say that it has been a pleasure to be able to say these meetings with all of you. Since you have me at your disposal for any question you may have, and thank you. Sorry about my English. If you want, I can speak in Portuguese or Spanish or Portuñol.
No problem. Thank you, José Ramón.
Okay.
We will leave time for questions after the third presentation. So we still have about half an hour or so for questions. As Domingo said at the beginning, please put all your questions not in the chat, but in the questions and answer section, so we can then identify those and ask to the speakers and include the speaker that you are addressing to. So just to finalize the speaker presentation, we have now the national point of view, let's say, that is provided by Ángela Iglesias Rodrigo. She's also forest engineering with ample experience in fire management, and she's currently the chief of the fire defense within the Minister of Ecological Transition and Rural Development of Spain, where she coordinates the international area and the national fire brigades. She has worked for more than 11 years with fire emergencies under the General Civil Protection Directorate. Thank you, Ángela, for being with us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Emilio, and thank you, Domingos, for inviting me here, representing my ministry and the effort that Spain is doing in the wildland fires management. Can you see my screen? Okay, perfect then. I take a short time because, as you can imagine, there is a lot being done from national and regional level in Spain related to forest fires. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I don't know now, we have a lot of experience here, so I could be talking about this for hours, but let's try to resume it in 20 minutes. Just for all of us to know what we are talking about in Spain. In Spain, we have 500 million of hectares, and most of half of the surface is forestry surface, and it is growing. It is growing due to the forestry policies, because we are foresting lands and territories, but also because of forest abandonment. Because if you leave the rural areas, then the forests start growing. We saw that in the pandemic, where we stopped driving the cars in the streets, and the vegetation only in some months started covering the areas, the streets and the avenues. So imagine in the forest. So from those surface, there are a lot of trees, but we don't have to forget about shrubs and pasture, that they are also forestry surfaces to be taken into consideration. Also, it's important in Spain, we have lots of conservatory areas belonging to Red Natura and so on. So not only they are mainly vulnerable, but we also have to pay attention, because Europe is putting an eye on those areas. So we really need, and we really have to look after them. And that is Spain. Now, concerning wildland fires, here you see the average, which I think is the best way to look to a problem, not only looking into the last year, which was really tremendous, but please take a look into the average. We have about 10,000 wildland fires a year. It is important to note that in Spain, most, and when I say most, is 60% of the fires are below 1 hectare. This means that we are pretty good in response, because all those big fires at the beginning, they were small fires. So we get that most of our ignitions in Spain become only a small fire, which is smaller than 1 hectare. Anyway, every year there is, as average, 90,000 hectares burned in Spain, okay? And our main concern now is those GIF, which are large fires. Those are the fires which are bigger than 500 hectares. As you see, for example, last year, it was a really bad year in Spain. We had not so much more fires than the average, but if you see the affected hectares is enormous. We had 260,000 hectares burned, and those who were responsible for those huge amount of hectares are mainly those large fires, our main concern here, because last year we had 55 large fires, okay? So we now put the focus on that. I think it's also important to share with you that in Spain, we have fires all around the year. It is true that mainly in summer, for sure, because those are the most adverse conditions, but also in winter, in spring, we have a lot of fires. In fact, it is very common that in March and in August, there is some day that we have the same number of fires. Of course, the affected surface is not the same in spring that in summer, but concerning the ignitions, sometimes in spring we have more ignitions than in some summer days. So please don't forget summer fires also in winter. So those large fires, our main concern, as I said. Why? Because this last year, those 55 large fires burned 83% of the total affected surface. So if we could erase those 55 large fires, the summer would have been, or the year would have been marvelous. But fortunately, we had those, for example, those enormous fires in one province. Unfortunately, it was in the same province. And you see, each one of them just burned more than almost 25,000 hectares. That's huge. We also realized that many of them were out of extinction capacity. So it's useless to attack the fire. You just have to accompany the fire and try that the fire makes less damage as possible. But you cannot attack the fire. You put water into the trees and the water doesn't arrive to the ground, or of course not to the ground, because the heat, the energy that is burning there is so huge that it is impossible to get close or even to put water on that fire. All of those 55 large fires had extreme behavior. And of course, this represented a slightly increasement in the days before control. So our response system had to adapt to that. And it's true that not society is always ready to understand this, because they don't really know, and that's normal, let's say. They think that all fires can be extinguished and every fire is a war. So those large fires are very difficult to attack. So in this framework, what do we do for response? I'm not taking much time in here, but I think it's clear that you all understand that in Spain, the regional level has the competence on prevention, detection, extinction, and restoration of wildland fires. It is them who decide how to deploy their resources, their prevention measures, and so on. So what does the national level do? What the national level do is support the regions under demand. There where we are demanded, we can give support on all those phases, from prevention to restoration. Also in the national level, we are different bodies. There is people from my ministry, Ministry of Ecological Transition, Ministry of Interior, through the General Directorate of Civil Protection, and people from the Ministry of Defense with the military unit that maybe some of you know. What we do is supporting the regions, as I say, and we have the competence on international cooperation. So with all these actors you see here, as you can imagine, we have to work very hard. And in fact, I can say that we are doing pretty good work on there on coordination. But going on with the response, just for you to have an idea, the national support to the regions in the response in summer, with 57 area resources and 10 heli-transported brigades. Okay, but this is only to support the huge efforts that the regions do. They have more than 2,000 area resources because they are responsible for this first attack. So all in whole, we are having almost 260 area resources in the country. That is why I surrounded this, the measure, one of our resources which are more valuable, and those are the aerial coordination and observation planes, because aerial coordination in Spain is really important. And it is one of our main strategies here, just to improve this aerial coordination. In winter, I don't want to forget that we also make the effort to have resources in winter. We are now in the middle of this summer season support. Here you see we have high capacity plane, helicopters, brigades, and these two Canadaires here, they are all year round. All the other resources are only from February to May, more or less, but all year round, I mean, in November, we have always these two Canadaires to support the regions, as I said. With all these actors, we have worked very hard in coordination. Coordination at the national level, and in this national level, we coordinate through the Coordination National Committee, which is called CECO, where all those national bodies are represented, plus the police, some train company, and the meteorological agency. Here is what we decide the resources for the summer, some agreements with some countries, so on. Okay, but just to be a national body in this problem. At the regional problem, there is another different committee, which is the National Wildfire Committee, where all the regions are represented and all the bodies from the national level. This cliff, this cliff meets twice a year, and extraordinarily, they can meet whenever it is needed. Then this is national level, but of course, we also coordinate in the international level. For example, we are present in the DJ ECO, also in DJ Environment. We have a net with FAO, with United Nations, and so on. It is important to be here in DJ ECO because for Europe, forest fires are mainly emergency and civil protection problem, let's say. But we strongly recommend that these wildland fires are not only a civil protection problem, which it is, but as Ricardo said, we have to face it from the environmental forestry approach. Otherwise, the approach we think is not complete. Also talking about this coordination, from the ministry, we started launching this national wildfire program, where all the regions and the national actors are invited in order to facilitate the fire management, of course, but mainly the cooperation between the actors. Why? Because in any fire, but imagining those big fires, any region is ready to face one of those fires, no matter how many resources you have, how many policies you have implemented. If you have one of those fires, you really need support from other regions or the national level. So from this national level, we try to strengthen this cooperation for when this situation, you have it in your region, you know how to cope with it, okay? So this national program has three main pillars. One of them is the joint field exercises, where we focus and design and exercise, and we involve several regions, several actors. Another pillar is the change of experts, okay, where we also focus on one subject. For example, we have talked about simultaneity, about big fires, about analysis, and we put experts from all the regions discussing and writing recommendation on this subject. Then these recommendations are sent to the CLIF, the Regional and National Committee. So we share it with everybody, and then we can put it up even to the legislative area. But that's not our purpose. We always work in the technical level. So 2 pillars here. The third one is this FAST team, which is the Forest Fires Assessment and Advisory Team. This team is working in national and international level. And what is FAST? What is this team? Well, FAST is this. FAST is expertise, is experts. In Spain, we have a lot of expertise, and also Spain is so diverse that we have faced almost all kinds of fires that we can find, let's say, all over the world. So the expertise we have here, we want Spain to be visible and to be able to support any other region in the world in need of help, but also the regions in Spain. So we have made a database of all those experts. Now we are, as I said, almost 200, and we are able to be deployed in response and in advisory missions. Response, for example, we are now, in this very moment, we are having this FAST team supporting Chile in the fires. An advisory mission in this moment today, we are having also people helping República Dominicana in order to know how to improve safety and security in the wildland fires. But the main areas of expertise of this group are operations and assessment and logistics, mainly in operations, and of course, prevention, preparedness, or whatever. We are having a mission in 1 month because of related to wildland urban interface. So this is the way that Spain can export their expertise and their knowledge. And also, which is very important for us, now in Chile, we are having a team of 10 people from 6 regions, different regions in Spain. Imagine how nice and how useful it is having those 6 experts together for 15 days working together. Once they are back in Spain, they have the feeling of being a team. So in the future, when somebody from Andalusia needs support, he or she will be more eager to ask for support from their colleagues in the FAST. So we are building a network, a real wildland fire network within Spain. And now more facing the strategy, which was the title of the presentation. In Spain, we have been working very hard together with the regions, because we understand here that if we don't work together, this is worthless. We have been together for a global strategy, which is the wildland fire management strategy that I have shared with the organizers so they can share with you. And first of all, for this strategy, we must also bear in mind that wildfires in Spain has always been, so its exclusion is not realistic. We need to learn how to cohabitate with fires. So fire zero is not the purpose. Also, but it's also true that the wildland fires is one of the main factors of degradation of our ecosystem. So we cannot say, okay, fires have always been here, let's do nothing. Also, new scenarios have appeared. So there is, the fires are becoming more and more a multi-emergency. So not only forest emergency, but multi-emergency. Also, forests are becoming more vulnerable, mainly because of that rural exodus. It is important that the wildland fire management fit with the social and ecological changes considered for the future. The society today is not the same society that we had some years ago. So we have also to be realistic on this. We must take advantage of all the experience in the fire-prone countries. This is the message I always send to the new fire countries, not because we have more experience or more knowledge, who knows, but please not to spend you so much time making the mistakes that we have already done. So only because of that, I think it's important that all those countries take our knowledge and our support in case they need. And as I said, also, we must not only focus on fire suppression, I think this message is already clear, but even more in fire prevention. But please, fire prevention is not only building fire cuts or decreasing the fuel in the forest. We must do sustainable forest management. As our colleague from Castilla y León said, if we don't manage the forest is not valuable. So forest management is the best tool to manage the fire. And also restoration activities must focus on the creation of more resistant and resilient territories. We must always, what we say here is that we must take the fire in every planning phase we are dealing with forest. And as wildland fire is a multi-actor and multi-factor risk, we must manage it with a holistic and multi-sectorial approach. So there is a need for a common framework concerning wildfires. That is what our colleagues from the CLIF decided. They wrote these strategic guidelines, which was approved some years ago, 2 years ago. And we have some general objectives here, or guidelines, which is the comprehensive management. As I said, so sometimes people is, let's say, some childish concerning fires. So please, fire is not simple. There is no only one solution, so we have to open our mind and really comprehend this fire. The social interest in wildland fire management, there is important to know that we have to find the common good. So we have to find what benefits society as a whole, okay? And this is what must prevail in wildfire management. We have to take into consideration many actors, many interests. Also the co-responsibility. The wildfire management requires coordination and the involvement of all the actors, public, private, rural, urban, okay? Adaptation and mitigation, we must stay a step ahead, okay? We cannot, sometimes in the administration, we go behind the reality. And with this, and I think many other problems, we must stay a step ahead and seek the preparedness for the future. So we should be thinking now for the risk in 5 years minimum. And finally, the operative safety, that is true that our response people, our brigades and so on, they have to be safe. We must give them professionalism. And for example, in Spain, we think that professionalism is that people stays in the forest as much as possible. If you know the forest, if you work in the forest every day, once you must face a fire in that forest, that is your house, that you know how the fire behaves, you know how to deal with that risk. So in this framework here, what this strategy developed is a general objective that I say is covering social, economical, and environmental effects as a whole. And they have 6 specific objectives that I'm not going too deep into them because I really recommend you to read through the document I have sent to you, but only I want to share with you those 6 objectives, which are manage the rural geography to achieve sustainability in the face of wildfires. So please, rural geography, we cannot rule from the urban thinking or the urban brain, those rural areas. We have reduced the risk of wildland fires, adapting ecosystems and preparing society for their occurrence. As I said, people must be ready and the landscape must be ready. We have involved other strategic sectoral policies in wildland fire risk management. And this is not only the same people in the same workshops day after day, but we have to talk with territorial people, agricultural, industrial and energy, environmental, of course, education, that is key, judiciary and emergency people, of course. We have adapted wildland firefighting organization to the newest scenarios, and of course reinforce this cooperation that is compulsive in case of a large fire. we have to know better the wildland fires and their impact on ecosystems. So here, university and research is key. And finally, we have foster society's participation in wildland fire management awareness risk. If people is not aware, the risk is surrounding them, they are doing nothing in their everyday or in their houses, and they are not pushing the politicians to change anything. So people must be aware of the risk. And that's all from my side. Thank you for your attention, and I'm here for any question.
Okay, thank you, Angela. That was quite interesting presentation and quite comprehensive. Thank you, and very useful for the activity that we are working on in Fire Risk. So we have about 40 minutes for questions. So please include yours in the questions and answer section of Zoom. You will find it in the bottom part of the menu. We can start from those that are already posed here, although I see that some of them are already answered, but maybe some of the other speakers also can say something about that. For instance, Cristina Santin was asking whether you consider that the education of people, particularly for evacuation activities in case of emergency, is good enough, or we should do something else about that? This is the question for everyone. Jose, Ramon, Angela, and Alvaro, although Alvaro already answered something, but go ahead, please, whoever wants to answer that.
Okay, I go. Of course, it's important that people know the evacuation routes, but it is only a small part of what they should know. Because maybe you know the evacuation, but you don't know when. So you know the evacuation route, but you don't know when to evacuate, or you don't even know that there is an evacuation plan. So I think it is more than that. We should make a big campaign in the media, in the social nets, making people to understand not only about wildfires, but I would say about forest. So as I am trying to show, it's not only evacuation route, you need to know about fires, about forest. And once you have an idea about that, that would be the best way to face the risk. But not only focusing on one single evacuation route, but just knowing the real problem and the real country you are living and the environment where you are living your everyday.
Yeah, well, if I may say, sometimes I think that we are so close to fires as the Japanese are to earthquakes, and I think every Japanese knows what to do in case of an earthquake, but I don't see many Spaniards can really react when they find fires. Alvaro, Jose Ramon, do you want to say something on that, on education of citizens? You have to unmute your mic if you want to talk. Jose Ramon, for instance, you can start.
Yes, I think that it's very important, the same that Angela says, that the evacuation way is very important, but I think that it's more important now that this evacuation may be dynamic. I think it's very important to make evacuation according to where is the fire, where is the resources, not only one evacuation for all the fire. And sometimes I think it's very important in the forest fire, not only make an evacuation plan, but it's very important. I think that it's very important sometimes to keep the people in the same place, to confine the people. I think that we have to make this aspect of these two aspects of the evacuation, not only one evacuation. I think it's very important to make a dynamic evacuation depending of where is the fire and the resources, and to have very present that sometimes it's more important to make a good to keep the people in the same place.
Alvaro, do you want to comment on this?
Well, yes, I think that this is a fundamental issue. And in fact, I wanted to end my presentation basically with that, with the relevance of education, sensibilization, and communication. And there's no doubt we have to dedicate more resources in general to that. What I would like to highlight is the need, two needs. First of all, we need to work with local authorities, because for this specifically, we need national campaigns, but we need to work on this locally. And second, we need to focus on the different groups of people. For instance, there was another question about tourists. We are receiving more than 80 million tourists every year, and we have seen in difficult situation, emergency situations. So the type of information that these different groups need is different, and we need to really prepare very basic messages and with different levels of complexity attending to the different groups of people.
Thank you. There is a question for Angela here, is whether the information that is provided by the different regions to the centralized database includes also prescribed fires, or is that this is not stored, let's say, centrally in your database?
Yeah. Okay, thank you. We have a database which dates from the 70s, last cycle, so we have a huge amount of information there, and that information comes from the regions. So the regions share this information about the occurrence of wildland fires with us. And also we have all the information concerning response where our resources have been. But we only go to, let's say, it is 10% of the fires, 5 to 10%. So concerning response, we don't have huge statistic there. And concerning prevention, we don't have we have our own statistics because our teams, they do preventive measures too, but we don't have any data about prevention from the regions. We don't have it. And I think this person was also asking for how we share information with Europe, and we share our statistics, but those we have with EFIS and with the Joint Research Center, and in fact, with anybody who asks, because it's open information.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Also to you is another question by David Thomas. With the aim of reducing the risk of casualties and destruction to property in the event of rural life fire, timely and effective communication with the public concerning the location and extent of the fires is vital. With many tourists and travelers driving from and to Portugal through Spain, could you explain what means are in places to alert travelers of fires that are in place so they can be avoided and prepared?
Well, here I would like to say that I have to say that I really invite Portugal, because they have a marvelous webpage where you can see fires in real time. Unfortunately, in Spain, it's not so easy because we are not a centralized country. So each region has to show their fires. And what we can show from the national level are the fires where our national resources are working. It is true that we work in almost all the big fires. In fact, we work in the fires representing 60% of the affected surface. So national resources are in the big fires, and those big fires, we really publish a bulletin twice a day. But it is true that those are not all the fires. So again, the regions are responsible for that. So maybe Alvaro or Jose Ramon can give you more information on that. And of course, we'll have the hotspots, that is available from EFIS, and it is really useful.
Any comment, Alvaro or Jose Ramon? No?
No.
Okay.
Emilio, do you want
yes.
to say that in the project Fire Risk, we are also developing the tool to help the citizens to cooperate with the authorities and to give this information, to share this information with the people?
Yes, actually, we have a mobile application that we are developing on this regard. It's now in beta version, but will be released soon. And that includes also active fires and fire risk information.
The fire risk, it's true that it's available through the webpage of IMET, the meteorological agency in Spain, and it is true that it's quite accurate. So the fire risk, it's true that it's available.
Well, another question by Arturo Colina aims to find out what are the specific measures to minimize the effects and impacts of forest fires in terms of post-fire actions. Are there defined protocols at regional or national level to follow, let's say, the damages and try to minimize the damages, the post-fire damages? Alvaro, for instance, can you comment on that?
Yes, well, I would say that regarding protocols, probably they are not that much developed, although there is a coordination framework between the ministry and the regional authorities to provide support for the most striking forest fires. Okay, and every year we, the regions, receive support from the national ministry to put in place the most urgent post-fire actions. For instance, I show one photograph that was taken in November from one of the forest fires in the province of Zamora, that because we are working not under a systematized protocol, but we know what we have to do. We take care of the wood, using as much as possible, then minimizing erosion, soil erosion, providing support to animal populations, for instance, in national hunting reserves, taking care of water provision for villages. That's fundamental, because we have a lot of problems during autumn, and of course looking at the road system, because after those fires, we know that there are a lot of problems. I can tell you that we, in the region of Castilla y León, has taken systematized measures after the two big forest fires in the province of Zamora and the previous year in the province of Avila. And I can tell that we have a really systematic approach working among the different departments, the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Economy, so all the regions, the departments in the region are really prepared to provide assistance, because the damage and the social response to events like those has been really striking. And so the government and the administration has prepared a response, and I think that for future events we are much more prepared.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Another question for Angela is whether you will foresee that there will be a unique strategy for the Iberian Peninsula, I guess including Portugal. Do you see any prospects on that, or?
As you can imagine, it is not me who decides on that, but of course that would be a good idea. In fact, Portugal has been ahead in this question, because they have been working very, very hard, I think, and they are developing their own strategy there. As I showed you, we only have the objectives. Now we have to work into those different lines of action. So, of course, Iberian Peninsula, we have very similar problems. That's to our politicians to decide. But technically, we work very, very closely with Portuguese colleagues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Another question maybe for Jose Ramon is dealing with the communication tool. No? Since you have the highest density region in the country, what would you recommend in terms of improving communication about fire danger and fire prevention measures to citizens? What would you recommend?
Here in Madrid, we have a special application for the mobile telephones. I think that is very similar to any other regions of Spain and any other countries of Europe. Is My 112. I think that is a very good application because we can receive the coordinates of the people, and here in our coordination center we can receive information about the fire. The fire is a very important communication because it's a communication in both directions, from the center coordination to the people and from the people to the center coordination. I think it's very important, this application, because sometimes if from the center coordination you want to know where is the people, it's very difficult because the person that is calling to the 112, for example, it's necessary to make some operation in his mobile telephone, and now is the transmission of the coordinates is automatically if you have this APP in your telephone mobile. I think this application is a good idea, but I think that it's necessary that this application will be the same in all the regions of Spain, because sometimes we have here one application, Castilla y León or Castilla-La Mancha have another application. I think it's necessary to be the same in all the regions of Spain. More ideas. I think that our Twitter is a very good application to give information for the people in real time. Sometimes the information about any other channels of information is very confused. I think it's necessary only one interlocutor, only one point of information, official information, like 112 here in the community of Madrid.
Thank you. Alvaro was talking before about for the importance of forest management to prevent fires. Ana Prados is asking whether you would recommend specific examples of practices that have been successful in preventing reducing fire risk.
Yes, well, but I wouldn't refer specifically to what is generally considered as a forestry practice. I would say I would highlight the program of brush reduction for grazing. That is a program that we have maintained for 2 decades to provide support to farmers to unbrush the land, clearing the brush instead of using setting fire to get a better pasture land. Okay, and that has been used extensively. I could say that we've probably unbrushed more than 100,000 hectares, something like 3,000 hectares per year, and that has had a clear effect on in the reduction of the number of forest fires in mountain areas. For instance, the mountains of Palencia in the Cantabrian range, or the mountains of Burgos and León do not burn like they used to do in the past. And the second practice would be the use of thinning in the pine plantations that during the 80s suffer a lot of forest fires because the local population hadn't perceived any benefits from the extensive plantations that were used in the 50s, were done in the 50s and 60s, and beginning with the systematic thinning programs provided a lot of income for the villages, and those pine plantations were very rapidly, very quickly accepted by population. Those are just two examples of really extensive prevention actions that have had a clear and direct impact at the landscape level, much more than in one specific forest. Okay, because I want to stress that idea of looking at the general landscape and really provoking changes in the landscape level.
Thank you. There's a question here, I guess, for Angela. You mentioned about the biomass accumulation from 30 tons per hectare to probably 120 in the near future. But obviously that implies also that there is positive impacts because you have more carbon storage. So what would be, Bruno Moreira question is whether it would be the optimal value, let's say, in tons per hectare, taking into account this trade-off. Angela or Alvaro, I don't remember which one.
I think it's more for Alvaro.
Okay.
Okay, yes, I provided those figures. I think that's striking figures. And I would say that, first of all, we do not have an analysis to answer that fundamental question, okay? And yes, I think that there might be an optimum. Of course, in general, we consider that this is very positive for the forest heritage of the country. It implies that we are recovering the status of forest. And I can say that the average amount in Mediterranean countries like in Italy or Turkey, it's about 100 tons per hectare, okay? But in California, we have 240 tons per hectare because the question of the history in the use of the landscape is fundamental. Okay, so our heritage has been intensively used, and we have to recover. I think that getting something between 100 and 120 will make our society really to face absolutely different challenges. That's why I wanted to highlight these points, but we might even double, like in California, I insist, is 240 tons per hectare on the average. To me, the question is not the total amount that is positive, is how managing that in the landscape. Because in a sequoia-dendron forest, you can have 5,000 tons per hectare and the risk being really low, okay? Instead, you can have a brushland with 50 tons per hectare, and that could be terrific. Okay, so the idea is really manage the landscape, getting a distribution of places with different densities, and use it. Use the landscape. We've been using it for 10,000 years, and we cannot stop. And that's what has happened in the last 5 decades. We need to learn for the next 500 years. We need to use again the landscape in different ways and being profitable, being competitive in open markets. We know the problems with the production of food in difficult environments, but we still, as a society, we need to find the ways to maintain extensive grazing, timber production, and use the landscape and maintain a secure landscape, relatively secure.
Mm-hmm. Well, then we have also the population challenge, but that's another issue. Okay. Anyway, David Thomas is asking about the application that was mentioned before. The one that we are developing within Far Risk is now internally being tested in the consortium. So hopefully we will have a first release for some external experts before the summer, hopefully in April. So you can be one of them, and we can share with you this application. Also, obviously, any recommendation would be quite useful. Another question, I don't know for whom, but probably Angela, is related to whether there is also some framework for assessing the damages of fires, and whether this framework is somehow feeding the sustainable management of the forest.
Okay, thank you for the question. Assessment, as I said, is key, but not only in fires, everywhere. So assessment and expertise sharing. So I think they are asking about the possibility that this FAST team is able to assess on this subject, and for sure, it's open to that.
I don't know if Jose Ramon or Alvaro wants to comment on that, or post-fire assessment, that we didn't mention much about it, but obviously it's important to have a better knowledge of how to do prevention as well. No?
Yeah, and I also said that in the strategy, we focus on that restoration, saying that wildfire must always be in the planning of this restoration. For sure, not to just to forest that area with fire-resistant plants and vegetation, but also it's very important to take people into consideration, take society to decide what they want to plant there, always with the technical support. Of course, they cannot plant anything in any place, but please involve society, rural people, all the actors there, because if people want that area to be for hunting, you should plant hunting plants, let's say. Mm-hmm. So just hear people and hear the landscape to know how you must restore that area.
Yeah, but I think the question was more related to the post-fire damage assessment. If you have any protocol, for instance, for fire severity, or I don't know, somehow planning post-fire activities depending on the actual impacts of fires and the spatial variability of those impacts. Well, both maybe. Angela or Alvaro, you can start with.
Well, I can comment that we do not have systematic protocols, but first of all, to me, there is really what makes a difference is size, because having we have like 2,000 small forest fires, and I would say that we do not have a problem in them. But the dimension of the problems increase with the really big ones, because then you get synergies, negative synergies of the effect on different ecosystem services, in water provision, in the distribution, the habitats for animal populations, and also for the people. And I absolutely agree with Angela that we have to listen to the local population, first of all. And then what we do is after each of these big fires, our forest managers visit the area and prepare plans that are being published in the web of Junta de Castilla y León, because in fact there is a political demand that those plans are prepared, and those plans are based on, first of all, in the evaluation of the damages or the effects on the ecosystem services, and then to decide on priority actions. As I mentioned, on water is essential, maintain the traffic, maintain the animal or recover the animal populations, and of course providing support to local people, to farmers, people who get their economic activity destroyed, and then of course the regional government has to provide support for these farms to be recovered in the next months or next years. Mm-hmm. So we are learning on that.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else want to add on this? No. Luis Carlos Gonçalves is asking you something, Domingos, about whether Portugal and Spain should join forces, no, in terms of fires as well.
Okay, thank you, Emilio, and the person who made that question. I had it already. Well, I think that this is very much in line with the purpose of our webinar. As you know, in our project, it's an European project. We are challenged by our program to propose an integrated scheme for the fire management. And what we have learned reading the programs and strategies of many countries, and even in this webinar, we are seeing that there is not a unique solution. There are different approaches, and we have to respect what people, let's say, are used to do, and they want to do, and they think that it's better. What we are trying to make in the project is to try to learn what are the overall proposals, what are the common ideas, what are the common principles, objectives, visions, and to share them, and to see if people eventually want to complete their visions, their strategies, or eventually change the order of their priorities, because in some countries we see some order, in the other some other different. And even today we saw that in the presentations, and this is what we are attempting to do. And regarding the cooperation between Portugal and Spain, it's true that it exists. And I think what we have to do, not only with Portugal and Spain, but with all countries of Europe at least, is to work, let's say, openly and without any prejudice or consideration of being superior in any aspect. Because what I see is that, for example, we may be ahead in some aspects because we had that disaster in 2017 that forced us to change many things, but in other parts we have many things to learn. So I think this is a common everywhere, and that's what we are proposing in our project, to share these ideas. And as I said, this webinar is an opportunity for that. Emilio, if you allow me, I would like to challenge and invite members of the observatory of the project that are attending the meeting, and we may perhaps want to say something. Peter Moore, I suppose you are in Australia, but you are attending. I don't know if you want to make any comments. And also our friend Ulrich Simulino from Germany. I think he had already asked also some questions, but please, Peter, go ahead. If you allow me.
Good evening. Thank you very much for the chance to attend and to listen to this very interesting set of talks. I think between Alvaro, Jose, and Angela, we've seen some really, really strong examples of good things being done, and some really good examples of the questions that we still need to ask and to answer. I think I draw attention to something that Alvaro mentioned, where he mentioned that the institutions have not changed in what they do, and that's a really core principle of emergency management, that the institutions that get involved keep doing what they're good at, what they know, what they're equipped to do, and what they know how to do. So if they build roads, they keep building roads. If they handle animals, they keep handling animals. If they manage forests, they keep managing forests. So that's really important, particularly for these big events and these complex events. Angela talked about the FAST teams, and I think that's a fantastic initiative. I think the way those teams come together is a great thing for Spain. It's a really good professional development and team building thing for those individuals, and it's a great resource for the rest of Europe, and as we saw other countries of the world. I'm very happy to hear that Chile is getting the advantage of some of those teams at the moment, because they certainly need it. And Chile would also benefit from that external view. You know, that Chile has some issues that are complicated and enmeshed in its history, and some of its political decision making, and some of its allocation of resources, that's land and water resources. And a country like Spain coming in can help reflect those things back to a country, because these long-term, as Alvaro mentions, these very long-term decisions, we have to set directions for the very long term in order to be able to manage this problem over time. So it's really impressive. I'm very glad I was able to able to make it. Thank you for holding it, and to all the speakers.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you. Okay, I think we are close to finalize. I don't know if any of the three speakers want to add anything or any additional idea that was not previously. Or Ulrich, do you want to ask anything?
I would thank for the good presentation. I agree a lot with the wordings. And we also see in Germany some of smaller parts of this development, not so much more burnable woods outside, but we also increase in forests. We don't decrease, we increase, but not so fast. And we have also the problems with natural reservoirs and the non-willing discussions about man influence on preparing also reservoirs on natural protective things for the fires. If we do nothing, we repeat the last experience of 2022 in Germany, I think over the next years. I'm with you. It's not a glass box. We have to be with the forest, also the reservoirs, to have a look at what's going on there and maybe to change some things, not much, but some things to decrease the burnable woods. I have a remark or question to the group. I'm also a member of the didnt discussion from the European Union. We are trying to standardize signs or wordings for this problem of fighting fires in forests. And we got a lot of discussions last week about definitions. Do we have any official Europe definition list about wildfire working? Because there are a lot of different meanings between Greek, Italy, Germany, France about speaking like helitech or not helitech or airboss or heliboss or whatever. There are different meanings, same wordings. And it's very hard to discuss things which are the same words but different meanings. So do we have in the Fire Jurist project any official catalog of wordings?
Emilio, I don't know if you want to comment. I think that we specifically we are not working on that. I'm aware that there exist several glossaries that have been developed in Europe. I don't know if they are updated. They may be, let's say, need to visit them. And I suppose that there are some projects, as you mentioned, that are trying to do that. I'm not sure if Fire Risk we are addressing this issue, but of course we'll pay attention to it.
Yeah, well, there is a United Nations disaster risk reduction strategy that includes terminology. We are now currently working within Fire Risk in a review paper that would also try to address these issues. I don't know if Peter wants to say something about that or no, Angel. Okay.
Yeah, I would like to say that I was working in one of those European projects. Sorry, I don't remember the name now. We made a glossary. It was Spain, Portugal, Italy, and Greece, and I think also Croatia. And it's true, it was about 10 years ago, but we have taken a look into that this year, and it's almost updated. So that could be used. I will try to get it, and I will send to you, Emilio, so you can deliver it. And now concerning symbology, we have just last month, we have finished working on operational symbology. Because if we want to work on cooperation, it's important that when we go to support my neighbor, I understand their maps, their cartography, and so on. And we have done all together with the regions a very short and concrete operational symbology. Because what we have also done this summer, as you said, new problems, we must find new solutions. We have had our national rule saying that we have to update some things, some papers and documents, and we are working on that. They would be free and completely available for everybody. One of those is this symbology, also aerial communication, glossaries, blah, blah, blah. So if you agree, if this is useful for you or for the project, I can share them with you because they are open information.
Yeah, okay, great. Thank you, Angela. Georgios, do you want to add anything?
Okay, yeah. Good morning, everybody. What I wanted to add to this, first of all, I thank Ulrich for putting the question. What Angela mentioned is very important. Actually, the question was mainly related to the symbology rather to the terminology. In case that you have something that is standardized or formalized at the national level, entities of use, it will be very, very interesting and important to share. Because what Ulrich mentioned before is related to an initiative for standardization of the symbology, the operational symbology used for wildfire management. So this input or contribution from the Spanish side, it would be very much important also to be considered within this standardization initiative. This was that I want to
Okay,
share.
thank you, George. Okay, so I think we are done with the original agenda. It's 12 o'clock, so I think it's important to keep also the punctuality. So from my side, I again thank you all the speakers for the great talks, and also to the attendants for the questions and their interest. I don't know if Domingos, you want to close the section?
Okay, Emilio, thank you. I think Peter more wanted to say something before.
No, just on the terminology, I think Angela mentioned that there's been some in the past, that there's other things, and there's also a push through UNDRR for standard terminology. It's Ulrich, it's a constant process. You know, every new group of people seems to think, oh, we need to define HELITAC, we need to define whatever. So it's ongoing as a thing, but we've covered it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Okay, and once again, let me thank you all for in the name of the project. First of all, to the organizer, Emilio and Angela, and for the two other speakers. I listened very carefully to your presentations, and as I said, these are good examples of how diverse approaches we may have in the integrated management of the wildfire risk problem. And these are good contributions for the work that we are doing. In the project, we are expected to produce a deliverable in about 6 months on this problem, on this topic. And these are all good contributions for our work. We are going to continue with this sort of webinars for the situations in other countries. So we'll announce you when we will organize them. This meeting was also a meeting of the observatory of our project. And I'm glad and thankful for the participation of at least 5 members of the observatory. As you may know, these are personalities that we invited since the beginning of the project to help us and to give us guidelines and orientations on our research, and they have been very helpful, useful for our work, and we are thankful for them. I thank all the attendants that have been following the webinar, and also my colleagues in ADAI who also technically supported the meeting and made this event happen. I wish you a very good day to all of you. And if we don't see soon, good work for the next weeks and months. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks a lot.